So welcome everybody. My name is Awasar. I'm Assistant Director for Academic Affairs at the African Studies Center, and this is Eye on Africa, our weekly seminary series. And we're very delighted today to continue our collaboration with Mr. Solomon Ballet. As I explained the last time when we met, I believe it was last month, October 17th. So that's when we have our first presentation with One Village Partners, and it turned out to be a very interesting presentation. So today, again, we were collaborating with USAFI, the United States and Africa Initiative, and also with Village Enterprise. And as I explained last time, the idea was to see what we can do with Mr. Solomon Ballet. And I will give him the privilege of introducing our guest speaker today. But before I do that, a brief introduction of Mr. Ballet, who currently is the founder and chief executive of USAFI, United States and Africa Initiative. He also serves as the Alliance manager of the East Contra Costa Community Alliance. He serves as the president of the Antioch Community Foundation and is a board member of the Village Community Resource Center and man-to-man urban youth advocate. Mr. Ballet has extensive experiences in nonprofit management and has held key senior leadership positions with various organizations, including the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, supporting U.S. domestic refugee resettlement programs throughout the United States. Keys to his leadership success have been his strategic vision and commitment to social justice, in addition to the extensive network he has developed with many professionals in the social sector. Mr. Ballet has a degree in sociology and an MBA in strategic leadership. He has a passion for building stronger ties between the United States and Africa. Thank you so much, Mr. Ballet, for your collaboration. And I pass it on to you to introduce our guest.
Thank you, Dr. Sar. It's a pleasure to be back a second time and to have this wonderful opportunity of introducing someone that I've been sort of following very closely, both the leader in the organization for quite some time. So without further ado, let me introduce Dianne Calvi. She is the Chief Executive Officer of Village Enterprise, and she's also joined by Winnie Awa, who she will be introducing later on in this segment of this program. So the topic today is quite an interesting topic, transformative approaches to poverty alleviation by Village Enterprise. So the organization we will be learning about is Village Enterprise and their efforts to transform poverty in a very significant way. Dianne Calvi is the CEO of Village Enterprise. It's a nonprofit organization dedicated to ending extreme poverty in Africa. And we all know that ending extreme poverty is also one of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. So quite a challenge. Since assuming this role of CEO in 2010, Dianne has spearheaded the organization's expansion into 7 countries, successfully implemented the first development impact bond for poverty alleviation, and conducted 2 randomized controlled trials with positive results. I am very, very interested in learning more about the development impact bond, and I'm sure the audience will also have some questions, given that that is a strategy and a tool that Village Enterprise is using to eradicate and alleviate poverty in Africa. Under Dianne's leadership, the organization has received awards and recognition for excellence, including Fast Company's World Changing Idea Award in 2023. And then in June 2023, Dianne received the Stanford President's Award for the Advancement of the Common Good. She also serves on the board of directors for Interaction and the National Advisory Board for Stanford University's Haas Center. Prior to Village Enterprise, Dianne served as the president of Bring Me a Book, an early literacy nonprofit. She graduated with a BA from Stanford University and an MBA from Bocconi University Rotary Ambassadorial Scholarship. So, about the talk today, great progress has been made in alleviating extreme poverty. And according to the World Bank, the number of people living in extreme poverty dropped significantly from 1.9 billion people in 1990 to 712 million in 22. Extreme poverty is still an issue with us and will remain an issue with us for quite some time. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and global conflicts and inflation, that progress stalled for the first time in 25 years. What does the evidence point to as a possible solution to this problem? And that's what we will be learning about today. The evidence suggests that entrepreneurship play an important roles in driving poverty alleviation. So in today's segment hosted by the African Studies Center at Michigan State University, we will delve into the innovative poverty graduation model implemented by Village Enterprise, which is an evidence-driven organization dedicated to ending extreme poverty in rural sub-Saharan Africa. Village Enterprise's distinctive approach integrates entrepreneurship, sustainable business practices, and intensive training and mentoring to equip people living in extreme poverty to start sustainable businesses and savings groups. This approach transitions them from recipients of aid to independent business owners and active economic participants. The discussion today will eliminate the foundational strategies of the poverty graduation model, which includes seed capital provision, ongoing business and financial literacy training, and continuous mentoring. A special focus will be placed on the role of local context and tailoring these interventions, ensuring they are culturally appropriate and sustainable. We will also explore several case studies that showcase the tangible impacts of village enterprises programs, including increases in income, assets and savings, improvements in living conditions, nutrition outcomes, and well-being, as well as broader community benefits. So this is quite an exciting, I must say, an exciting presentation, something that we've been waiting for quite some time. And we have enough time for Dianne's presentation and Winnie's presentation, followed by a Q&A. And of course, put in your questions in the chat or in the Q&A as that comes up for you. So again, without further ado, I want to turn it over to Dianne Calvi for her presentation today. Dianne?
Thank you, Solomon. It's a pleasure to be here. And I would also like to introduce Winnie Auma, who is Village Enterprise's Chief Program Officer. Winnie is an extraordinary professional that's been with Village Enterprise since I started in 2010 and knows our program sort of inside and out. Village Enterprise is an African organization. I'm the exception to the rule. We have over 500 people on the ground in Africa working to end extreme poverty in rural Africa, and Winnie oversees all of our country teams, our program staff. What I think is really exciting about Winnie's own journey is when he started with Village Enterprise as a business mentor, delivering the program in the field, and was so inspirational and so successful with the entrepreneurs that she worked with, that she's worked her way up in the organization, became a field associate, became then our assistant country director in Uganda, then our country director, and now our chief program officer. So she really understands what it means to deliver this program and adapt this program so that it has impact. And that's really what's critical. So we will be hearing from her later on in the program. But to just introduce you to Village Enterprise, Village Enterprise's mission is to end extreme poverty in rural Africa through entrepreneurship, innovation, and collective action. And we'll be talking about all three of these today and how critical they are to solving this really complex problem. It is the #1 sustainable development goal. And as Solomon mentioned, we are, for the first time in many years, starting to see that progress halt. And so for many, many years, as Solomon mentioned, from 1990 to 2020, we saw the number of people living in extreme poverty substantially decline. For over 1 billion people exited extreme poverty. But with climate change, conflict, decreasing aid budgets, there's a threat to that progress that had been made over the years. And in Africa alone, over 400 million people are still living on less than $2.15 a day. The picture that you see here is from northern Kenya. It's a picture I took, and it's an area that has experienced really severe drought and is impacted more by climate change than just about anywhere on the planet. So many of the areas that we work in are impacted by drought, floods, and we'll be talking about Village Enterprise's approach to addressing some of these systemic problems. Our goal is to lift 20 million Africans out of extreme poverty by 2030. So we really hope to play an important role, not only in the number of people exiting extreme poverty, but also in contributing to the evidence base so that others can learn from Village Enterprise and scale up, and we can actually, we believe, solve this problem. We can end extreme poverty. We have a solution. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So as I mentioned, Village Enterprise's poverty graduation approach ends extreme poverty through entrepreneurship. And we provide people that are living in extreme poverty with a whole package of services, equip them with the resources they need to start what we call sustainable businesses. We want these businesses to be successful over time. And we have evidence that proves that we can do that we can cost effectively lift people out of poverty. And I'll be talking more about our randomized control trial that found a return on investment of over 500%. But before I do that, I want to talk to you a little bit about the model itself so that you understand exactly kind of how we work. So Village Enterprise's poverty graduation model is a 1-year program. And over the course of the year, Village Enterprise has sequenced interventions that lead to people graduating out of extreme poverty. And what we're trying to do is address the multiple poverty traps that keep people in extreme poverty. We know that money alone is not enough to really help people out of extreme poverty. So what we do is we target the people that are living in extreme poverty, and we do that with our business mentors. I mentioned that Winnie was a business mentor. Ours is a community-based approach. So it's business mentors from the local communities that deliver this program and go into the communities. They interact with the local government officials, local government leaders to identify who are the poorest people living in their communities. And we use some other tools to target to ensure that the people that we're working with are indeed the very poorest people in the community. Most of the communities that we work in have high levels of extreme poverty. So we may work with anywhere between 80 and 90% of a village community in many of the areas that we work in, because we're really trying to go into the areas that need this program the most. So we target the people that are living in extreme poverty, and we organize them into business savings groups of 30 individuals. And the savings group is a group that allows these people who have never saved before, who have never started businesses before, most of them are women, over 85%. It gives them a place to start saving money and to start providing small microloans to one another. And then the next step in the process is training. So our entrepreneurs receive comprehensive training in things like bookkeeping, group dynamics, marketing, sales, all of it. I like to say it's like a little MBA program. Solomon, you did an MBA, I did an MBA. When you think about these people, these are people that have never started a business before. And so we're providing them for the first time with the knowledge about how to run a business. And running a business is not easy. So there's the need for this kind of extensive training so that they learn how to run a business. As part of that training, they learn about putting together a business plan, a very simple business plan that identifies how they're going to spend the seed capital that they're going to receive and how they're going to ensure that that business is a profitable business. And they do that with their business mentor. And they do that in a group of 3. So they're put together, they come together in groups of 3. They self-select who they're going to be working with. And as a group of 3, they put together their business plan that identifies how they're going to invest that seed capital. And then we provide a cash transfer. And that cash transfer is meant to be invested in the business. So what they've identified in their business plan is the assets or the services they're going to need to access are identified in their business plan. They're going to use that seed capital to start that business. So for example, if they were starting a livestock rearing business, they would use that seed capital to buy livestock. They would use that seed capital to build a shelter for their livestock. They may use some of that seed capital for transportation to go purchase the livestock, but the seed capital is invested in the business. And then they receive ongoing mentoring by their local business mentor throughout the program. Mentoring is really important in terms of building confidence, and our mentors answer questions about both the business itself, but also about like how to manage a business. We also provide them access to markets and financial services. And then at the end of the year, they graduate. And throughout this program, we're providing digital solutions. All of these components have a digital component that Winnie will talk about in more detail. We're in the process of this program also working on women's empowerment and building climate resilience that Winnie will talk more about later in the program. So we have, over the years, reached over 321,000 first-time entrepreneurs, and they've launched over 100,000 businesses. And as a result, our program has transformed the lives of over 2 million people. We try to make sure that each business is represented by one household. When we look at the entrepreneurs that we train, they have families, and the program has such transformative impact that it lifts the entire family out of extreme poverty. So Solomon mentioned earlier that Village Enterprise has conducted randomized controlled trials. And the importance of a randomized controlled trial, for those of you who are unfamiliar with RCTs, is the fact that you have a control group, and that allows you to prove attribution to the program. And Village Enterprise has always been an evidence-driven organization. We conducted our first RCT in Uganda between 2013 and 2015 with the results that came in 2017. And then those results were positive. So Village Enterprise was selected to implement the first development impact bond in poverty alleviation. And that involved us doing a second randomized controlled trial in Kenya and Uganda. And what we found with those 2 randomized controlled trials was really significant impact. And it was really exciting to see, because we knew from our own internal monitoring evaluation that we conduct that we had a really positive impact on income, savings, assets, and consumption. But we also found out that there was a really significant increase also in things like mental health. So in particular, women's mental health really improved as a result of the program. Their sense of well-being, their sense of economic standing and agency, as well as food security. So the number of meals that people eat per day, their protein consumption. So this really has this very comprehensive impact on a family. Not only do they get lifted out of extreme poverty, they come away feeling more hopeful about the future, having a better sense of overall well-being and confidence in themselves. And we found this with the RCT. And one of the interesting things about our first RCT is that we compared the Village Enterprise program not just to a control group, but also to a fully costed unconditional cash transfer. So one of the questions in international development right now is, could you just provide cash? There are organizations that are doing that. They're just providing cash transfers. And so we wanted to understand the value of the mentoring and the training and the costs that go into that. So we gave one group, part of the randomized control trial, just cash, versus our complete program. And our complete program had a much more significant impact on income and savings and consumption. And so it really does make sense to invest in training and mentoring in the savings group if you really want to lift people out of extreme poverty. Our second randomized control trial also found that for every dollar that's invested in this program, our entrepreneurs generate $5.34 in income. And that's a really huge multiplier. And that is because these entrepreneurs have all of the tools they need to start profitable businesses. And so every dollar that we invest, they're getting this multiplier of $5.34 in the income from their businesses. And that income is sustainable over the long term. So Village Enterprise has, over the years, done 5-year longitudinal studies, because we think that it's really important to understand not just the impact at the end of the program. Our program is a 1-year program. So we're every year evaluating our program after the year is done and making sure that our entrepreneurs are successful. But if we really want to end extreme poverty, we know that we have to have impact over the long haul. And so that's why we do these longitudinal studies and look at results after 5 years. And 5 years later, we see that 70% of the entrepreneurs are still operating their businesses. And that's a huge number. If you look at like venture capital, they don't get nearly that kind of success rate. They're happy if 1 in 5 are still operating their businesses. And so these are really positive results. And we see increases in daily meal consumption, that 42% after 5 years, an 83% increase in consumption after 5 years. And the one that's the most extraordinary is over 900% increase in household savings after 5 years. So really a transformative impact that lasts for many, many years. And I thought that it would be helpful to just share a story that gives you some sense of that kind of transformative impact and what that looks like. So back in 2010, I had the opportunity to meet Helen. And Helen was a young woman at the time. She was starting a tailoring business for the very first time. And Helen was a very ambitious young woman and received our complete program and really wanted to expand her tailoring business. But there weren't enough tailors around. So Helen started training other tailors. She wanted to get others to be able to join her business. And that was so successful that she ended up starting a training center, and she started training young women, not just in tailoring, but also in catering, which was another small business she was starting, as well as hairstyling and other small businesses. And today, 14 years later, Helen has trained over 400 young women in different areas, tailoring, catering, and hairstyling. And so it's really quite remarkable that in that 14-year time frame, these women now, some of them have joined Helen's tailoring business, but many have gone on to start businesses of their own. And not only did she, she's a trailblazer and an ambitious woman. So not only did she expand her tailoring business, she also started a catering business that now employs 20 people. And her success did not stop there. Helen, as you see now, is also a member of her city council, and she holds the title of Secretary for Finance and Investments. And, Helen is just one of many of our entrepreneurs. And what I really love to see is the impact that our program has on the next generation. So here you see Helen's daughter, and over the years, what Helen was able to do with the income from her businesses is educate not only her own children, but also 7 other children from her community. So Helen has sent 10 kids through high school, and then her daughter, Gloria, on to university, and Gloria is now a trained pharmacist, which I just think is absolutely remarkable. That kind of impact is just tremendous. And this is someone that I met when I first started with Village Enterprise. So it really is exciting for me to see personally this kind of transformative impact and know these people firsthand. So Village Enterprise, now that we have the evidence that this model works, we are scaling our model across multiple countries. We have governments that are interested in embedding this model into their social protection. We are one of the largest NGOs working with partners to scale up the model through other large NGO partners. And we have international funders like USAID, FCDO, the Gates Foundation. If you look at international development funding, the 3 largest funders of international development programs are the World Bank, USAID, and the Gates Foundation. And all 3 are funding Village Enterprises scale up. So it really is great, like, validation for the model and validation for our organization. So as Solomon mentioned, we've been scaling throughout Africa, and what you see here is the progression that we've made over time. So just since 2017, we've gone from 2 countries. We're now in 8 countries, working in 8 countries. And the 4 countries you see in the light green, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, and Ethiopia, are countries where we have our feet on the ground. So we have our staff working in those countries. As I mentioned, we have over 500 staff in those 4 countries. And then in the dark green countries, we're working through partners where we provide technical assistance to those partners. And then the orange countries are countries where we are going to potentially expand in the next 2 years. So our growth over the last, in particular, the last 5 years has been really significant. So since 1987, Village Enterprise has transformed the lives of over 2 million people. It took us 1 million, it took us 27 years to get to 1 million people, and just 5 years to get to the next million people. And in just the next little less than 2 years, we'll get to 3 million. So we're really on this scaling journey now, where we feel confident that Village Enterprise will reach its goal of 20 million lives by 2030. And in order to do that, we've identified 4 strategic priorities and 3 enablers. And we're going to just talk about the strategic priorities today. And I'm going to turn it over to Winnie, who's going to talk through the priorities and how we're actually going to achieve this goal of lifting 20 million people out of extreme poverty by 2030. Go ahead, Winnie.
Lovely, thank you, Diane. So we're just about to launch this strategic plan, and as Diane has already mentioned, we've been having ongoing efforts to really continue to expand our reach, but also continue to deepen our impact across Africa, working with governments, working with NGOs, but also local partners. And so as we think about this next strategic period for us, it's really about scaling the model. And we don't believe that we can do this alone. Like Diane already talked about the numbers, the need is high, the reach is greater. And as Village Enterprise, we believe that we can be able to reach more and impact more lives if we really build our work through partnerships. So we're going to be working with governments, we're going to be working with INGOs, national NGOs, and local NGOs. And I will be talking about some of this work that has already happened across the countries that we have just talked about. Our second priority is really centered around addressing systematic problems. And when you really think about our mission, which is centered around entrepreneurship, innovation, and collective action, we recognize that systematic issues like climate change, systematic issues around food security, around market failures, those are not things that as Village Enterprise we can tackle alone. And there is no way you can lift people out of extreme poverty without addressing the root causes of those issues. And so on that strategic priority, our goal is really to find partners in the conservation space, partners that are working in the market systems development space, working with governments across the countries that we work with to continue to double down on this already impactful model so that we can reach more and continue to be cost effective in the way that we do it. And then as an organization, we keep saying that innovation is in our DNA. And so our strategic priority 3 is really centered around continuing to double down on our innovation to increase impact and using technology as an enabler. We've already started to, use technology to deliver our program. We've already started putting technology in the hands of our entrepreneurs, and some of this technology addressing systematic issues around access to information, access to markets, knowing when and how and who to sell your product. Some of those things we're really using technology as an enabler in that, but we're also addressing issues around financial inclusion. A lot of the entrepreneurs that we work with are individuals that are living on a $2.15 a day, and they are not clientele for financial institutions. Our approach, our model enables us to get them to be market ready for financial institutions. And we have solutions that we're currently testing across multiple geographies and scaling them so that we can build a credit history that can then be taken by financial institutions so that they can start to see these communities and these households as bankable. And finally, our 4th priority is really centered around for us to continue to enhance the power of results-based financing so that we can continue to deepen our impact, but also driving cost effectiveness. Imagine that across the world, all of the aid went to paying for results rather than activities. that has significant impact in transforming how organizations deliver programming, how organizations design programming, because the incentive for them to do that would be that whatever resources they will be receiving, they will be getting that to pay for the results that they have achieved. And we have already, demonstrated this through the first development impact bond that we implemented in the poverty alleviation space in Africa. And so we're building on a foundation that was very successful. And our goal here is not just to continue to enhance this, to leverage that for village enterprise, but for the broader economic inclusion sector at large. Then if you could move to the next slide, please. So I did talk about our strategic priority one, which is really centered around scaling. And I just want to talk about some of the work that we have done here. We've worked with the government of Kenya in a Kenya Economic Inclusion Program that targeted really vulnerable communities in Kenya. And the idea is that we continue to work with governments to really embed this model and this approach as part of their social protection programs. We all know governments have the structure. Governments have the resources. And so if we can get governments to adapt and scale approaches that already have proven models, I think the potential for us to be able to double down and reduce the number of extreme poverty individuals across sub-Saharan Africa and the world at large is significantly high. And our goal as Village Enterprise is continue to work with government, build their capacity. We've done that with the government of Kenya in phase 1 of the project. We are currently in conversation with multiple actors, with the World Bank and the government, on a potential scale-up of that project. We are also working with county governments. In Kenya, for example, we have a project funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to really get county governments to start to adapt this model. So this can happen at a national level, but it has also happened for us at county levels. In West Pokot, which is a county in Kenya, we already supported the government to continue to engender their policies, to continue to adapt, climate smart policies within their broader local government policies. And the goal is to continue to use this approach to really help governments continue to deliver positive outcomes for their citizens. In Rwanda, with funding from USAID's Development Innovations Venture, the largest funding that has ever been given to any organization, we're working with the government of Rwanda on a results-based or a milestone-based project. So building again on the work that we did around the development impact bond, we got funding to support the government of Rwanda to scale graduation. And we are being paid to, we only get paid based on delivering results and milestones for the government. And some of the work that we're really doing there at a national level, we're working with the Ministry of Local Government and Minalog. At a district level, we've already secured commitments from these governments to fund graduation. Just recently, Rulindo, Giakachare, these districts already committed over 6 million in additional funding for graduation. And these commitments continue to come from the Rwandan government as they see the benefits of this program, as they see the impacts of this program in the community. And our goal is to go beyond these two governments. We're in conversations with the government of Uganda, the government of Ethiopia, and other governments that we're working in to really continue to influence and hopefully get graduation embedded as part of social protection programs that are being delivered by the governments. And on a really exciting note with our government work, this week, our chief government officer is actually participating in a G20 meeting in Rio. And so we're really excited about that opportunity. And he's there alongside a government official in in Kenya. So really just continuing to spread the word, continuing to get governments. And when you think about the G20, that is one of the most influential global platforms that really allow us to continue to advocate for these types of approaches. Again, I just talked about this. So this work continues to be positioned across multiple governments. A second way we're really looking to continue to partner is to do work with large INGOs, small local organizations, and national NGOs. And we have work where we are in Ethiopia, we're working with 2 local organizations where we are providing technical assistance. So as Village Enterprise, we don't believe that, we're gonna get far by consistently just going to every country and setting foot and setting an office. We believe that we can go far and reach many and impact many and transform many by finding local organizations that we can support to build their capacity to deliver this approach. So we're working in the highlands of Ethiopia to really on a project funded by USAID in partnerships with Mercy Corps and local organizations to deliver this model. So we went there, we did an assessment, we have co-designed tools with them, we supported them to recruit the teams, we supported them to set up their finance systems, their M&E systems, so that they can then start launching this program, tracking it, and monitoring that with our ongoing support over the life of the project, with a goal that they can start to scale this work across other parts of Ethiopia. In Tanzania, we're also working with local partners, specifically, reaching refugees. And the same thing we've done in the DRC with a number of conservation organizations. And we've been doing this work for over 15 years. And we know that local partners can do that. Dianne, if you could move to the next one. And so coming to our, really strategic priority 2, which is centered around addressing systematic barriers and systematic problems that keep people trapped in extreme poverty. We've implemented projects funded by USAID that specifically allow us to address issues of malnutrition. Dianne showed you a picture of northern Kenya. On that project that's funded by USAID, our big focus was reaching children under the age of 5 and lactating mothers, because malnutrition rates in northern Kenya were so severe because of extended drought and climatic challenges that the region was experiencing. So we went in and started to really
Solomon, are you?
Yeah. So
I can fill in.
Can you fill in? I think she's frozen now.
We're waiting for Winnie to come back. Yeah. So Winnie was talking about our work in northern Kenya, which is on this food security activity project. And what we saw with this intervention, so it's poverty graduation, the model that Village Enterprise has been implementing, and we continue to implement in northern Kenya, but working with Catholic Relief Services and layering additional training around child nutrition, family food planning, and food security, as well as actual nutrition supplements. And what we saw is just extraordinary results. Severe child malnutrition declined from close to 40% to just 4% over the duration of the program. So really significant impact. Also, we have other variables that we're looking at, like food diversity and kind of minimum food requirements in terms of Winnie, do you want to continue? I was just kind of filling in the blanks about the Nweri project and the impact that that's had on severe child malnutrition. So you don't need to go into the program. I already did the layering, talked about that, so you can continue.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I think I was just going to say that. So we started to see impacts really around reduced malnutrition, significant reduced. And then we started to see really improvements around dietary diversity. We started to see improvements around behaviors in terms of around, people treating diarrhea, people like these health-seeking behaviors really, improved across the communities that we worked with in a really very positive way. And that project really sparked conversations around the sector within USAID, and it has certainly led to designs of other similar approaches across the regions that we've worked with. The other thing is really centered around market. So we've partnered with an organization called Masico, again, to layer, sequence, and integrate our model with market systems development. And this is really important for areas where the market failures, like across the refugee settings that in Uganda, in Ethiopia, and in Tanzania, where this approach is being implemented in partnership with Masico. These are areas that, a lot of them have infrastructural issues like Doloado, a lot of infrastructural issues. Access is not easy. Markets are not easy to get by. Inputs are not easy to get by. So to really build an ecosystem that supports our entrepreneurs to be successful with the businesses that they launch, or even to launch businesses within value chains that are profitable, we had to work with specific private sector actors and promote specific businesses. So really, this idea of the pull and push interventions and initial results are very positive. They all, both in Uganda and Ethiopia, we have RCTs that are being implemented in line with this project, with the hope that we can start to see what are the additive, benefits of layering graduation to market systems development work. But preliminary internal results are really looking positive in terms of income, in terms of refugee participation in market. It's looking positive for well-being for women. It's looking positive for cohesion, and we'll just continue to be excited to continue to, explore and take this model to other countries. And then around our climate work, certainly Dianne talked about the challenges of, poverty, but you cannot talk about, extreme poverty without talking about climate change. Like, we work in the nexus of both. And when you really think about the effects of climate change, it hits the most vulnerable first and hardest, the women, the girls, because when prolonged droughts hit, they are the ones that have to go farthest distance to find water. When all the trees are cleared in the area, they are the ones that have to go farthest distance to either find wood or find cooking solutions. When, there are crop losses because of either, soil erosion or flooding or drought, they are the ones who are hardest hit because the numbers are there. Africa, over 65% of Africa depends on rain-fed agriculture. And with climate change, we were certainly seeing the impacts of this. And so we're really doing our climate work and conservation work in two areas. First is that we recognize that for Africa to be able to mitigate this problem, we need to protect existing ecosystems and existing services and existing species. So we work with conservation organizations in Uganda, in the DRC, and other parts of the countries to provide this approach as an alternative model, as an alternative livelihood around protected areas. And we've seen in Uganda around Mactions, for example, very positive attitudes towards the park after we've worked with the communities. We've seen very positive attitudes towards law enforcing agents when we've worked in the communities. And all the outcome indicators continue to be very positive for the community. We also saw that, illegal activities in the park significantly decreased once we started working with the communities around the park. And so we continue to work with conservation organizations around that. And then within the larger climate work, we've integrated within our broader programming, climate smart practices, whether it's farming practices, whether it's rearing practices, whether it's helping entrepreneurs to think about diversified livelihoods, or helping them to think about how to save for seasons of emergency. And we've seen that all of those allow our entrepreneurs to be very resilient in the face of shock. Dianne, if you could move to the next slide, please. And then in our priority 4, Dianne already talked about, our use or our focus of innovation. So across all the dimensions of the program that Dianne talked about, when we're doing targeting, we use phone-based surveys to collect this data from the communities. The data gets synced into our adaptive management dashboards. So our business mentors, who are frontline people in the field, are quickly able to see what is the business health of my businesses. How are my businesses doing? Are they making profits? Is their business value good? Do they need to pivot because maybe this business is not doing well? They're able to use this adaptive management data that is powered through Salesforce to make decisions on a daily basis in terms of contextualizing support that is given to the entrepreneurs. Around savings growth, we recognize that there's a lot of challenges when communities are not able to keep and use records for business decisions. And there is actually correlation around those businesses that are consistent business decisions. They tend to be very successful. And so we've started to support our business savings group in partnership with Dreamstarts Lab to use an app called DreamSave, which is really a digital way of using record keeping. And what our goal here is that we will build credit history, and we've already started to see results where business savings groups that are using this app are outperforming business savings groups that are not using this app for record keeping when it comes to like the performances of their savings groups around savings, around payment of loans, because the digital app also comes with sends out, it's able to send out nudges, like quick messages, to quick reminders that, your loan is due, savings is happening tomorrow, so people are able to take quick positive actions around that. And then across all our programs in Africa right now, we deliver them through digital training. So we provided portable projectors to all our business mentors. We've created short 1 to 3 videos for each of the training models, really focus on complex parts of the training. And that allows consistency, but it also allows for us to be more efficient, because our business mentors are able to do more because they don't have to do all of the talking, because there's time savings that comes with the use of technology. And then all our grants, there was a time when we used to give cash, And now all of that is delivered digitally, and then I talked about adaptive management. And then now our savings groups and businesses are actually beginning to use M-Pesa accounts in Kenya or mobile or MTN in Uganda to buy or sell their products. So they're able to just continuing to see the role of technology when it comes to program delivery, efficiencies, but also the effectiveness that is coming around with the ability to consistently access information or to consistently deliver the same message across multiple African countries. Dianne, if you could move to the next one. And just to summarize, just to also add that we're also looking at different partnerships across multiple areas. So right now we're talking to TAN.org to try to figure out how we can create an offline versions of information, so-called chat for Gen AI, and we're looking at how we can make information accessible to anybody without our business mentors. We want individuals to be able to access information. We're talking to Atlas AI to figure out how we can start to use satellite imagery for targeting versus sending our business mentors to target every household, with a goal of really creating efficiency. And then we're continuing to refine our training tools to get the best tools that can be scaled across multiple countries, but also that can be offline, so that our entrepreneurs can access information without the aid of village enterprise.
Yeah, I just want to add to this. So, I think what we see in the population that we work with is they have low levels of literacy and they aren't used to using digital technology at all when they start with our program. They have not really used the phone for anything other than making a phone call. And so part of what we're doing with our digital technology tools is really getting them so that they're comfortable for the first time in using these digital tools to run their businesses. And our goal is to eventually have essentially a toolbox, a digital platform for them to access, so that they can take advantage of all of what's happening now with AI and with all of these learning tools that all of us have access to, and can really become much more productive as a result of using these tools. It's going to take time, but it is a goal that our entrepreneurs then wouldn't be reliant only on their business mentor for knowledge about how to run a business, that as our business mentors transfer out, because we have a one-year program, they would be able to access, through chat, an AI platform that would allow them to continue to ask questions and learn and get best practices, as well as digital training videos that are online through these communities. So it really will be transformative. If you think about it, our entrepreneurs are the only entrepreneurs probably in the world now, or entrepreneurs like our entrepreneurs, that aren't using digital tools to run their businesses. So that puts them at a competitive disadvantage. And what we want to do is make sure that there is this kind of tool set that not just Village Enterprise will roll out, but also all of our partners, the governments that are partnering with us and the NGOs that are partnering with us, so that these micro entrepreneurs also have access to these really important tools for running their businesses. Go ahead, Winnie. Priority 4.
Wonderful. And so priority 4, really, here we are centering our work around, spearheading results-based financing so that we can drive impact at scale. And Dianne briefly talked about our first development impact bond that was very successful, that we implemented in Uganda and Kenya. And I don't want to talk about the numbers there, but what's really important to mention is that we implemented the development impact bond, and the results were collected during COVID. And so for the outcomes to really be positive, and it was structured in such a way that we only got paid after we met the results. So we had investors, we were the service provider doing the implementation, and then there was an independent evaluator, and there were investors, and there were outcome payers, and we were able to deliver on this project, deliver on all of the outcomes that we intended to deliver, and actually surpass those outcomes. And our investors got paid back their investment plus an interest that was intended for them after we had met the results. And I think why this is really important is that traditionally you see a lot of aid or donor funding going to fund activities, but we're not really sure, are those activities impacting the communities? Are those activities delivering on the intended outcomes? Are those activities meaningfully driving change in this community? And so for us as Village Enterprise, it was really important and gave us the flexibility to focus on things that drove the impact and not just implement any activity for the sake of implementing an activity. And I think that this is such a transformative instrument within the sector. And as a result of the success of that first development impact bond, we were then able to work with, we were able to get additional funding, new funding actually from USAID Development Innovation Ventures, the largest grant they had given in a decade to really work with the government of Rwanda on an outcomes-based contract. So again, we only get paid if we meet the results, if we hit the targets, if we hit the commitments that we have, that are stipulated in the contract. But even on the Rwanda project specifically, we have a goal to leverage an additional 28 million in outcome funding, and so it's okay, Diana. That's okay.
I apologize. I'm trying to get. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. And we've already seen that the government already, the districts that I earlier mentioned already have given 6 million in commitments. There was another 2 million in commitment, and the government of Rwanda is really very positive about, scaling graduation, and we're supporting them to set up an MIS system that can, support them to track, all of their citizens through a single registry process. And so, it's really exciting, the possibility of what this could do to the development sector at large. Thank you. And Dianne, feel free to add anything here.
Yeah, so I just want to focus on what results we're trying to achieve so that everybody's clear on that.
Mm-hmm.
So when Winnie talks about the development aid sector, typically most development aid projects, like she said, are funded on activities. And what that means is they're funding like how many people you're training. And that's usually based on receipts that they receive from the contractors. And there really isn't a tie to them. Once those people are trained, do they actually, like in our case, start businesses that lift them out of extreme poverty? There isn't that like incentive to actually achieve the impact. There's an incentive to achieve the activity numbers, right? Like to get a number of people trained. And if people are trained, but they don't actually, they're not trained in such a way that they have the the resources and then the knowledge and the skills to actually run profitable businesses, all that money goes to waste, right? If they're getting trained to start businesses, but those businesses aren't profitable, then what was the point, right? And you know, what we see right now is there is across the world a bit of a backlash, you know, at a like public support level to international aid. And I think one of the reasons is so much international aid is spent, and it's not clear oftentimes what results are being achieved with that international aid. And what we're trying to do at Village Enterprise is change that. And with the Development Impact Bond, the results that were targeted were income and assets. It wasn't how many people we trained, even though we say we trained 14,000 entrepreneurs. We did train 14,000 entrepreneurs. And we did launch 4,766 businesses. So we also achieved those activity milestones. But what was more important is that we increased the income and assets of those first-time entrepreneurs. And the number that I gave you earlier, every dollar that was invested in this impact bond generated $5.34 in income. We also saw that each on a per capita basis, there was $40 in assets for each person impacted by the program, 95,000 lives. So there was really significant impact that was delivered through this. And it was so significant that USAID, that had funded this first development impact bond, was interested in scaling it up. And what Village Enterprise proposed, because we really do see that it's governments that are going to be able to scale this. You know, Village Enterprise has grown to 500 employees. You know, we could grow to 5,000 employees and still not be able to achieve our goal of 20 million lives, you know, people lifted out of extreme poverty. We need to work with governments. And in order to ensure that as governments deliver this program at scale, there need to be funding incentives for governments as well, right? So when the World Bank pays governments, if they're paying them based on activities, you may not see those results. But if you pay based on results, people lifted out of extreme poverty, income and say assets increased, then the funding that gets allocated to those projects is much more likely to really achieve the #1 sustainable development goal of the United Nations, which is to end extreme poverty. So we really feel that this is critical as we go to scale with this approach. We know this approach can deliver results. We've proven it time and time again. Now, as we go to scale with governments and other organizations, we want to ensure that there is that continued focus on results and continued focus on lifting people out of extreme poverty, not just training them, but actually getting them out of extreme poverty.
Thank you. Thank you, Dianne. Thank you, Winnie. This is an excellent presentation, and I wish we had more time. You know, I really wish we had more time because there was so much information that you shared with us that really requires all of us to kind of process it and understand it better. But you know, I'm just inspired by the impact to date, which is 321,932 entrepreneurs trained, 100,000 plus businesses started, and 2 million plus lives changed. And that's just in, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years. And then aspiring to actually lift 20 million people out of extreme poverty by 2030. That's just in the next 6 years or so, which is what's left. And, you know, I did read something that by 2030, we will still have about 575 million people still living in extreme poverty. This is a report, I think, put together by the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So 575 million. So 20 million represents about 3%. You will actually be able to take out 3% out of that 575 million people. So there's a lot more work out there for sure. And we need more village enterprise organizations for sure joining this effort if we're going to make a difference at all in eliminating or really scaling down extreme poverty. There's just much more work that has to be done by more organizations. And I'm really glad to hear that you're reaching out to other partners and governments to work with you and that you're not doing this alone. This work can't be alone. I mean, it really requires a lot of partnerships. And also, thanks for sharing a little bit about the development impact bonds. Uh, just very curious to learn more about that, and I'm sure it's as you learn more about what more needs to be done, that model itself will be modified and adapted to the local situation. But that's sort of an interesting approach. I'm curious, as someone that has worked in philanthropy for some time, how do you identify donors that actually sign up for the development impact bonds? I mean, because you do link donor funding to specific measurable social outcomes. That's sort of the model, I think. And I'm just curious, how do you identify those donors? What is the payout to donors that come on board?
So in an impact bond, you have two types of essentially, I wouldn't even call them donors. So you have investors and outcome funders in a development impact bond. So the outcome payers are those that are paying on results. So in the case of our impact bond, the outcome funders were USAID Development Innovation Ventures, FCDO, UKAID, as well as a private foundation, Wellspring Foundation. And in the case of the outcome payers, what they're saying is we're willing to pay a small return on investment to investors that provide the working capital, because a nonprofit needs the money to launch the program. So the investors are providing the working capital so that the nonprofit can deliver the program. And then the outcome funders are saying, okay, we're going to pay based on the outcomes of the program with a small return to the investors, because the investors are taking some risk that the nonprofit won't deliver a return in terms of results. And in the case of like how we went about that, there was interest by this private foundation in proving that this kind of model could work. And so they basically put up matching funds, $2 million in matching funds. And then we went to USAID and FCDO with the project and said, this is what we'd like to try to prove. And we showed them our randomized control trial results. So we said, we know that this program can deliver these results. And this is the kind of project we'd like to set up to prove that you could even do it at a larger scale than what we did with our first randomized control trial. And that if this is successful, then you could really go to scale with this with governments and other NGOs. Like you said, Solomon, village enterprise on its own is not going to end extreme poverty, but we have a model that we know works. So we want to get it we want as many organizations and governments implementing this proven evidence-based model as possible. And we want to attract new funds. And what we figured is if we can show that you can actually pay on results, new funds will be allocated. And that's what we're finding. What we're finding is because of the success of the impact bond and also success of our Nawiri project, the project, the nutrition project, USAID and World Bank are now basically saying poverty graduation is a model that we want to go to scale with hundreds of millions of dollars. So the impact bond, we first got the outcome funders behind it. And then we went to investors, private investors, that that we knew that are in our circle of donors, and then a few others outside of our circle. We just essentially started looking for organizations and people that were interested in this innovative model. That was successful. Our investors got paid back their money, and then USAID Development Innovation Ventures said, this is a successful model. We could see this being really important for USAID as USAID goes to scale this kind of model. And so they've then funded this next iteration, which is this large milestone-based project. Village Enterprise is now working with the Rwandan government. And so we're getting paid on implementing our program, Village Enterprise, but the next phase of the project is the Rwandan government will actually be implementing the program and trying to achieve the same results as Village Enterprise. And the idea is then also others could, like local NGOs, could also implement the model. And they would be able to tap into this outcome fund if they achieve results. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Dianne, for elaborating further. Very fascinating. Dr. Leo Zulu has his hand up, so let's see what question he has or comments. Dr. Leo?
Yeah, thank you. I imagine I don't see my camera. I don't think it allows me to show it.
Go ahead.
So my name is Leo Zulu. I'm the director for the African Studies Center, but I'm a geography professor, and I do a lot of development work. So pretty much all of it Southern Africa. So thank you very much for all the Dianne and your team of presenters. So this is an excellent example. Sometimes you work in development, it can be a little depressing and lonely. So all this effort, where does it head to? Which are the sustainable solutions? And it seems like you have a good model here. But I was wondering, there have been other models that have been used before. Like I think the like OVOP, there was like the one village, one product model that was used, and Jeffrey Sachs used the Millennium Villages approach. And then I don't know what it is that you would have learned from some of these programs that led you to this model, and how you think this is different and it might work, maybe a better model to move forward.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think when I came on board at Village Enterprise in 2010, what I first did was look at all the evidence that had already been generated for various models. And at the time, the model that was the most popular was microcredit.
Yes.
Everyone was talking about microloans at the time, and that microloans were going to be the solution. But the problem is when they started doing randomized control trials on microloan programs, they found that microloans were actually not lifting people out of extreme poverty. They weren't really for the population that Village Enterprise is trying to serve, for the extreme poor were actually not better off. They weren't getting increases in income and assets. And part of the reason for that is that microloans are expensive, and they were so busy trying to pay off the interest from their loans that they weren't able to generate enough money to actually lift themselves out of poverty. And so we were looking at the evidence on microloans that didn't look very promising. And we had done some of our own evaluation at a small scale of our model, and we did see like this multidimensional impact, not just on income and assets, but things like mental health and things like nutrition and things like children in school. So we saw that this model that we had was having this multidimensional impact. And we thought, well, let's do a randomized control trial. Let's show, let's provide the evidence that this actually works. And the other thing we were looking at is cost. So one of the things about the model, the millennial, what was Jeffrey Sachs' model called again?
The Millennium Villages.
No, the Millennium Villages model. There were couple problems with that model. It was a very expensive model.
Yeah.
It required a lot of investment in each village. And it was very difficult to really prove that it was actually scalable. The nice thing about our model is it's a very scalable model. It's a very cost-effective model, and it can be implemented in a relatively short period of time, where you within a year you actually can see a significant percentage of the people being lifted out of extreme poverty. You can actually measure it, and you can actually track it. So that's the other thing is, you know, if you want to pay on results, you have to know that the program is leading to results. So that's why Winnie talked about our adaptive management systems. So we have these systems. They're based in a platform called Salesforce, which you might have heard of. And we actually look at multiple points in time at business health, at the savings levels, and we track those so that our business mentors can go in and do targeted interventions. And then the other thing about this model is because it's both an individual model and a group-based model. It kind of gets the best of both. So there's individual initiative that you want to encourage, right? So there's that. But there's also the need to build social capital, especially for people that are living in extreme poverty. Most of them are women. They don't have social capital when they start with our program. So by having the savings group piece of this, you know, program, is that helps them build social capital. And as you saw with Helen, and this is not, you know, this is not a total outlier. Many of the women that go through our program do become leaders in their communities. And that's really transformative. You know, in rural Africa, typically women are not in leadership positions. So you're seeing really a transformative impact. So those are just some of the I think, some of the reasons that we think this model really needs to be scaled up. And fortunately, it's not just Village Enterprise now, based on evidence, like that's what we generate as evidence. You know, World Bank, USAID, Gates Foundation, other big funders are really getting behind this model.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for that question, Dr. Leo. Very, very important question. We have lots of questions actually in the Q&A. I'm going to read it out, and we have about 10 minutes or so left. Our time has gone by so quickly, but a couple of questions by Professor Valeria La Saponara, a good colleague of mine from UC Davis, asks, how do the women stay in leadership positions in their businesses? Do the men in their communities try to take over? That's a question from her. Let me ask her other questions so that you could address them. Are you concerned about any bad actors accessing digital information of the businesses? Winnie spoke about the digital strategies that you're using, and Professor Valerie also said you need strong digital security. I'm sure that's something you've talked about. So let's see if we can address some of those questions. And then her last question is, where could we find the details of the RCTs, the randomized controlled trials, RCT, and you've done a few of them already. So those are questions from Professor Valeria. Who would like to take
Winnie answer, but I just, as far as where you can get the results from their RCTs, they're on our website, so you can get them on the website. And then I'll let Winnie answer the questions that she's asked, because they're really great questions. Thank you, Winnie.
Thanks, Dianne. So Professor Valeria, on your first question around how do women stay in leadership positions in their businesses and do men in their communities try to take over? In our experience, our attrition is actually less than 2%. So we don't even see that women are dropping out of the program. A significant part of the reason is that we have a lot of community engagement processes in the start of our program. And our program, even though we have one representative coming from the household level, the program actually engages the entire household. And the selection into the program is through a self-selection process that happens at a household level. So the household has to sit and decide, is it the man, is it the woman? They will talk about the levels of effort needed to participate in the program, and then they will self-decide who needs to participate in the program. And then throughout the 1 year we're working with them, men are invited. We actually have sessions that require the participation of the entire households. So not only does the program support the direct participants, the program also engages the entire household. And because of the community buy-in and because of the engagement of men throughout the program, we've seen very little to none cases of men trying to take over. In fact, what we've seen is that women-led businesses, women-led savings groups are more successful than men-led businesses or savings groups, and they continue to thrive.
Winnie, in the interest of time, would you mind responding to some of the other questions that Professor Valeria asked in the Q&A dialogue? I think you're able to respond if you don't mind, because I want to ask another important question from Max Shoka, who happens also to be a trustee of U.S. Africa Initiatives, and his questions, either one of you could respond. I'm curious on what changes to your model or process were needed as you implemented projects across different countries and cultures. For example, were there differences between Kenya and Uganda? Dianne?
Winnie.
Or Winnie? Sorry.
So, sorry. In terms of the changes for the program across the different contexts, we have changes in terms of the demographic focus. So it could be refugees, it could be youth, it could be women, it could be malnutrition. So those are some of the differences. We also have differences in terms of the specific issues that we could be addressing. We have cases where significantly there are higher gender issues or significant climate issues. So we would intensify a program based on the contextual issues that are within that specific area. The approach is broadly the same, but we adapt to target specific demographics. We also adapt to promote specific businesses that are supported within specific contexts. So in Northern Kenya, for example, we cannot promote on-farm enterprises because of prolonged drought. So a lot of our enterprises are off-farm enterprises. So we have to do those adaptations based on the micro, context that we work in.
Thank you, Winnie. I think that's all the time we have for questions, and I want to turn it back to Dr. Sarr.
Well, thank you so very much. And I mean, we have 3 more minutes if you want to.
3 more minutes, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, great. You're giving us 3 more minutes. That's wonderful.
Yes.
Okay.
I see Jenny Olson's question if you want to. Oh,
sure,
Max.
let me.
Well, I mean, that one was answered.
I did ask Max's question.
Yeah.
So let's see. Let me take a look at the Q&A. Jenny, this is a very impressive program. What are some of the major challenges you see in moving it to other places or to other communities? So you're already doing that, but what are some of the major challenges? And let's see if Jenny has another question.
Do you want me to address that?
Please, yeah.
Yeah, and Winnie might have some other things to say. I think, one of the things that we find as we move into new areas is one of the biggest challenges is just different governments and regulations and, just risk and compliance issues that do vary from country to country and even region to region. So when we're entering a new area, we do a really thorough analysis and sort of due diligence and deep dive to understand the context that we're going to be operating in. And because we have a community-based approach, we are hiring exclusively local people. So, all the way up to our country directors. So when we're entering, like we just entered Ethiopia not too long ago, our country director is Ethiopian. Everyone that's working in Ethiopia is from that, that country. And even like we're hiring local people that deliver in the local areas, because in a place like Ethiopia, the differences in the tribes between the highlands versus Dalawato, where we're working near the Somali border, very, very different languages,
Sure.
different tribal customs. So the fact that it is really a locally led type of approach gives us a lot of advantages as we move into new countries and new contexts.
Well, as an Ethiopian myself, I'm so grateful that you're doing work in Ethiopia, and hope the project you're working on continue to scale and have a greater impact. Back to Rawa.
Thank you very much, Solomon, and thank you, Dianne and Winnie. This was very interesting. We learned a lot, and we wish you good luck with expanding it and keep doing the good work that you do. This was great. We thank also the audience for attending and for your questions, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, everybody.
And
Thank you very much.
thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank
Bye.
you.